Dear Matthew, thanks very much for trusting me with your written work. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like a good fit for my list at this time. Of course, this business is nothing if not subjective, so I have no doubt you'll find enthusiastic representation elsewhere. Yep, no, that's a rejection. Hi, I'm Matthew, author of A Medic's Mind and Woven in War. As you just heard, I received a rejection letter just now. And as you also heard, I've written 2 books already and been published. So how does that work? How can you be a published author and still receive rejection letters? Well, in this video, I'll go over that and explain it to you. So if you're an aspiring writer trying to get your book out there, or even just trying to publish a story, this video may have some value to you. So stick around and we'll get into it. One of the biggest mistakes we can make as aspiring writers is make assumptions. Assuming that our written work is really good and that it's going to get picked up easy no matter what, everyone loves what you write, etc., etc., etc. And while that may be true, you may be a fantastic writer, it doesn't mean that it's going to get picked up easily, and it certainly doesn't mean that anytime you submit something, it's going to get published. I began writing not by hope of being published, but as a way of therapy. It's just kind of what got me into writing. We all have our own story. Anyway, a publisher reached out to me and said, "Hey, I really like what you're putting out in the world. I really think there's a story here. Let's work together." To which I said, "You're not a publisher, leave me alone." And then I Googled this person, and guess what? Yeah, they're a publisher. Oops. So don't make assumptions. The world of publishing is vastly different now than it was 30 years ago. And while you may be, a really talented author, whether that be by natural talent or by way of schooling or whatever the case may be, and you may have some really important things to share and some really, profound things to write about, it doesn't mean that it's going to get picked up and find an audience right away. So making assumptions is one of the biggest things that'll flatten your tire right away. The other thing is to be accepting. Be accepting of rejection letters. I just got one, and it's not a personal thing, like a personal attack. It's not, an ad hominem. Like it's just not a right fit for this guy, and that's fine. But there's plenty more agents and publishers out into the world that I can submit my stuff to. And does that mean that it's going to get picked up? No, it might not. But if I keep putting my stuff out there, the likelihood is a heck of a lot better. And we also live in a time now where we have giants like Amazon that come along and saturate the market with books. Technically, anybody can become a published author or self-published author. The problem with, places like Amazon is that they don't really ask for quality of work rather than formatting competency, meaning that you don't have to be a good writer to get published on Amazon. You just have to know how to format correctly, and then your book is out there and ready for sale. So then what's the difference? What's the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing? Well, self-publishing is as described, right? You publish it yourself, you figure it out, you pay everything up front, you do all the work, and then you publish your book. You can even outsource some of that work, but you're still likely paying for it, as in paying for a cover design or paying for an editor, a copy editor, whatever the case may be. There's even third-party companies out there, they call them vanity publishers, that you can pay to do all that kind of, fancy work for you, and then they give you a book and away you go. Traditional publishing is, well, it's traditional. It's you submit your work into a already solidified publisher, and then they publish your work because they find that there's a home for it in their catalog and that they feel like they're going to get their money back for it, and you will receive a compensatory remuneration and you are off to the races. The problem is that traditional publishing has whittled down to a finite number of actual big name publishers. I believe there's 3. I can't name them off the top of my head right now, but Simon Schuster's one, HarperCollins is another one, Penguin Random House, and then they all have little umbrellas beneath them where there's other imprints and things like that. But to get in with these publishers, typically you need to have representation, meaning you need to have an agent. So how do you get an agent? Well, you get an agent similarly to the way you apply to get your book published. You have to submit your written work to an agent, and they have to decide if they like it. Justin did not like my work, and thusly we will not be working together, and he will not agent my stuff. That's fine. That's all well and good. There's plenty of other agents and publishers out there that I can submit to. So when you start running into these roadblocks, we're like, oh man, Penguin Random House is calling for submissions, but I can't submit because I don't have an agent. Now I got to submit to an agent, but this agent's rejecting me. What do I do? Well, the only thing you can do if you really want to get published, and that's just keep putting stuff out there. Starting a blog is a really great way to have your work in the public sphere without publishing your book as a self-published book. A lot of agents don't want work that's already been published. Now, that's not a solidified rule. It's not a hard rule. Some agents don't mind, but as a general understanding, they would rather have original work that they can pitch to publishing houses and things like that. So try not to get bogged down in the details of, oh man, I need to check this box, this box, this box, this box, because there's always boxes to check, and there'll always be new boxes to check, because the world of publishing is ever changing, and it's somewhat, murky waters right now with, the clear path to getting published. A good case in point of this is the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. Now, this author started on Instagram. They started on Instagram, had a good social media presence, and now they've published this book, and it's doing really, really well. Instagram is not really traditional publishing. Instagram's not really the typical way that people go about getting published. So there is always workarounds, especially in the modern world. So if you're not finding success by doing the old paper and submission route, don't worry about it. Rejection really is part of an author's life. Stephen King has been rejected. J.K. Rowling was rejected by almost every publishing house in the UK until she wasn't. And the same can be said for your work. It might not get picked up right away, but if you keep submitting it and you are open to criticisms and you're open to refining your work, you really might find somebody who is interested in publishing your stuff. I suffered with this for a long time, where I, calling myself a writer, it felt like, to be a writer, you have to make a living at it, right? Like that's your profession. That's not true. Being a writer is a calling. It's a passion. It's something that comes from in you. And I write every single day. I write my good stuff. I write my bad stuff, meaning my happy moments and my bad moments. And it's a way that I navigate the world. It's how I view the world. I am constantly writing, even if it's without a pen or paper. In my mind, if I see something, go through an experience of some kind, I am always writing. And then when I come home, I usually have notepads on my computer, and I write down little notes. And eventually those things can sometimes turn into blog posts, or turn into podcast episodes, or they turn into a chapter of a book that I'm working on, or an idea for a book that I'm working on. So don't worry about the title of writer. If you love writing and you're focusing on writing, guess what? You're a writer. Being a published author is great and all, and I'll never take away from that feeling. It's an incredible feeling when you get your work in your hands and it's bound by, that casing, and it's like you smell the new pages of a book. That is an incredible feeling that never gets old. Or when you publish your work into a magazine or a small, novella, or even a chapbook of some kind, it is incredible to see your work out there, because that's hard work. It's blood, sweat, and tears in a lot of cases for a lot of writers, depending on what you're writing about. But writing is a labor of love. There's actually a great quote from somebody that I'd like to read for you right now. It goes like this. It's by George Orwell, author of 1984. Writing a book is a horrible, exhausting struggle, like a lifelong bout with some painful illness. One would never undertake such a thing if one were not driven on by some demon. The genre that you write really doesn't matter, whether it's fantasy, whether it's fiction, sci-fi, or nonfiction, sports bio, whatever the case may be. To be a writer, you just have to be possessed by a demon. It's that simple. Just look, the world of publishing is a really different place now. The landscape is very different, but it also has a lot of opportunity. Yes, there's a lot of constraints. There's many publishers that open up and they ask for listings, but then when you read through the criteria, sometimes they're asking for things that you just don't fit into. For example, a lot of times they're wanting representation from underrepresented groups. I don't really fall into that. However, that doesn't stop me from applying anyway. Not because I'm trying to take away from somebody else's opportunity, but because I do have things to say and I think that they have value, whether or not I come from a certain ethnic background or not. I still apply. I don't let things hold me back from applying. The worst case scenario is they say no. The best case scenario is they say yes. But if I don't apply, it's already a no because they never see my work. They never have a chance to say yes or no. So submit anyway, within reason, of course. Like, I mean, if it's, if you're trying to submit your, 4,000 page novel to a kid's publishing house, it's probably not the right fit. But I think you know what I mean. Try not to compare yourself to other authors. A lot of times in the submission processes, they ask you to find books that are similar to yours or within the same niche, books that are comparable to your title. That doesn't mean that you need to compare yourself to those authors. Every author is different. You are your own author. You're the only author that is you. And that makes you pretty special. It also means that you have a lot of value to offer somebody. It just might take some time before somebody sees that value and capitalizes on it. So when it comes to submitting your stuff, don't look for getting paid right away, right? Like you shouldn't be forking money out if you don't want to. The typical rule is that money should flow toward the author and not away from the author. There is exceptions to every rule. I mean, if you want to pay somebody to do your cover design because you're not very, artistic or tech savvy, I was one of those people. I paid for that. I paid for my recent cover to be done. And I also kind of entered into a hybrid thing. A hybrid thing is where you pay a cost and the publisher pays a cost. There's numerous different ways to go about doing things. My first book, A Medic's Mind, was traditionally published by Winter Tickle Press. It's a small independent publishing company here in Canada. I didn't pay anything up front, and it was just, the publishing house took care of everything. That's one way. The other way is hybrid, like I mentioned earlier, where you pay a kind of a split fee. Then there's vanity publishing, where you usually pay everything up front, and then they, kind of market your book in a sense. That's a good thing to touch on. Marketing. You're going to have to market your own book. That's just how it is. Even with a traditional publisher, they'll market it, they'll push it out, they'll get it out places for sure. Absolutely. Especially the bigger publishing houses, they'll definitely do it, only for so long, because they're going to go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So if you want your book to do well, you're going to have to find marketing strategies. But we live in a time where there is artificial intelligence now, and you can use things like ChatGPT to help guide you through a marketing process. He can even, oh my God, I called AI AI, artificial intelligence. It can write you a comprehensive marketing strategy that you can follow and implement, and you can tailor it and, see what works and what doesn't work, omit things, refine things, and get some success, a modicum of success with it. You have to market your own book. It's your book. You want it to do well. So it makes sense that you're going to have to put in a lot of time and effort. So be ready for that. Accept the fact that you're going to have to put in time and effort. And finally, and I think most crucial here, is don't get down on yourself if it takes a while for something to get published. Even if you've never been published and you're putting your work out there and it's still, suffering rejections, that doesn't mean you're a bad writer. It doesn't mean that your stuff isn't worthy of publishing, and it doesn't mean that you should give up. Definitely don't give up. If this is something that you really want to do, don't give up on it based on the, subjective viewpoints of some people. You haven't reached out to every publisher. You haven't talked to every agent. There's always new agents. There's always new publishers. There's always new ways to publish. Never give up if this is your goal, if this is your dream. Definitely keep writing. And, if you find that you're getting bogged down in the negative of all these rejection letters, I've found that some authors, actually on some sites that I belong to, they actually frame their rejection letters. I know it sounds a bit strange to frame that and not your acceptance letter, because they're so few and far between, but it's almost a badge of honor, because they're going through the trenches, they're going through the battle, they're going through the war, they're fighting the good fight until eventually they win that battle and they get published, and that is a huge victory, and that's what they celebrate. The biggest thing they celebrate is holding that book or that published story in their hands, and that is worth all the time, the effort, the struggle, the rejection, the tears, the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, and everything else that you can go through. That's what makes it worth it. So if you're thinking about publishing or getting published, do it. You have a story to tell, and you're the only one who can tell it. So be sure to believe in yourself. That's all the advice I have for you today on A Medic's Mind. I hope it made sense. It was a bit of a rambling thing, but That's kind of been my experience as I've gone through the whole publishing system. That's it. So anyway, we'll talk to you next time.